We've got hundreds and hundreds of customers in New Zealand, and we're working with probably some of the biggest fuel users in New Zealand. I remember when I was probably about 3 years old, following the electrician around our house, picking up all the bits of wire he cut off and putting them into a bag. That's my earliest memory of being interested in the electrical field.
What was the thing that you noticed like that 4 or 5 years ago when you got into this niche of specializing in fuel management, tank management, fuel dispensing? Like, what were some of the core competencies you brought over from the previous set of skills and the people you'd employed that you thought actually this applies to Everlink?
Yeah, well, we spent a lot of years developing products for other people and working with other development companies, and bringing to market new ideas and products, and not really having any control of what happened to them or how they went. So we ended up sort of being left holding the baby sometimes, you could say, with developments, doing a lot of work, not getting the return for it, having no control over what happened to those products or where they went or how they were marketed. Saw a lot of different people developing products in different ways, some of them underfunded, some of them had plenty of funding. Not really a single model that I saw worked perfectly. There's lots of things that can happen during development. So we did that for probably a good 12 years. We've been developing products. Got to the point where we thought, well, we were involved in the fuel management product, and we decided that I could see there was a lot of potential in that market. There's some really old technology out there for the fuel market in the commercial space. So we thought we'd create some new products around that and our experience, and sort of done it in the Kiwi fashion, where we're completely underfunded and we'll take on the world. So
you're right. That seems to be part of both our unique skills of dealing with some of those constraints around lack of Silicon Valley style money. There's not buckets of cash pouring down on ideas in New Zealand. But by the same token, it's got to have a pretty tight market fit and solve a business problem pretty early on. What is some of the business problems that your software, that AFM and AFM Lite, solve?
There are other systems in the market, of course, mainly imported systems. Again, a lot of them running on older technology. Not being very flexible in how you can use them. So we like to create products that have got added value and save people money in the long term. So we work with a lot of clients, small and large, Kiwi Rail right down to individual small tank farm users. So building software and systems that are intuitive, easy to use, very simple to maintain, reliable, and actually save them money right through the whole company rather than just at one end of it. So right through to their accounting and their reconciliation of their fuel and things like that, down to the users in the field, making it nice and simple for them to use. So it's intuitive, and they're not having to ring someone up every 5 minutes when something's going wrong. So I think one of the key things that I've found is technology. More and more technology is going into every product these days.
Yeah.
And it's actually becoming harder for people in the field to diagnose those products and fix them, and tell you what's wrong with them, or they need to be able to get hold of someone to be able to talk them through it. So we try and design products that have a lot of that technology. We use a lot of that technology to diagnose problems and faults, and when someone rings us up, we already pretty much know what's wrong with the system. So our systems have to work 24/7. There's no breaks. We've got fuel being delivered every time of day by all sorts of companies. So, they have to work. We don't want to get called at 3 o'clock in the morning all the time when something goes wrong. So there's a lot of self-diagnostics built in, a lot of self-healing things go on in the systems if they need to restart themselves or do things like that. So you've got to build a lot of smarts into the systems these days so they actually become reliable. Otherwise, the technical people in the field are becoming very hard to come by. They've almost, technology sort of advancing so quickly it's leaving everyone behind. So all the service guys, they're just struggling with it. So the more we can build into systems to make it more self-diagnostic in the field and keep things nice and simple is sort of where we're at with it. So that's sort of one of our advantages, I think, over some of the other products that are available. We can fix 99% of things over the phone or on our computers remotely, remote connections and things like that.
So if I understand you correctly there, Dean, there's an intelligence in the software that is being produced and distributed, but if something goes awry with that fuel storage or fuel management, that those in the field may not have the skills necessary to be able to diagnose. Therefore, there's more dependence on Everlink to be able to diagnose that remotely and be able to have some degree of be able to provide some degree of diagnostics and resolution, or do you support those in the field to then do the resolution?
We support them in the field to do resolution if it's an urgent thing and they need to swap something out. But there's also a lot of diagnostics that we can also remotely change things and set things up differently so it bypasses a certain part of it to keep it running until a service person can get there. So not necessarily having to call a person out at 2 o'clock in the morning and get all the associated charges with that. They can actually plan it into their normal working day and be able to go there and fix things. So classic example could be a failed nozzle switch on a system. Typically if that happens, they pick the nozzle up, they can't get fuel out. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to fix that unless you go there and change the nozzle switch. So just simple things like that, we can actually bypass that in our system. So that'll get the fuel up and the fuel going again. They'll be able to use it, and then the next day someone can go there and fix it. So that's all about the cost saving. Getting people up and running. A lot of these companies are fueling 24/7. They have key fueling times, and there might be, a bus company might have, 100 buses coming in between, 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, or even more. So as soon as that system stops, all of a sudden they get this big line of buses running out on the road, and they've got, nowhere to put them, and they need fueling, and it just, the whole roll-on effect is quite incredible. They can't just drive down to the local service station and fill them up. You can imagine what would happen then. So it's really key to keep things running, and being able to bypass things and make things more intelligent so that we can do that remotely. Doesn't matter where it is in the world. That's what sort of is giving our systems an advantages over some of the other products.
And this wouldn't be something that that many of the audience would even be aware of, right? Because these petrol stations aren't the ones that you and I would go to fill up our car. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a bus fill up at a local petrol station. These are dedicated places that heavy transport go to refill, to be able to move products and people from A to B. Have I got that right?
Yeah, correct. So it's called basically the commercial fuel market, not the retail fuel market. So the commercial fuel market is anyone who has their own bulk tank on site. So you've got bus companies, trucking companies, companies like Kiwi Rail, Fulton Hogan's, civil works companies, trucking. There's all sorts of companies all over the country with their own fuel tanks, even mobile fuel tanks on trailers and small trucks as well.
And this would be quite a significant cost for them. So smart management of that fuel cost, is that something then they look to Everlink for, as being able to manage that fuel resource in an efficient way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of aspects in the system that are used for different things, and anything from securing the fuel to getting accountability on where the fuel's going, who's using the fuel, what they're putting it into, and a lot of these sites are unmanned. They're used after hours. when no one else is around. So security is a big key, but just actually for them reconciliating the fuel to what's been delivered and what's been taken out even. So there's lots of aspects right through to companies using different aspects of our system to prove that the fuel's good quality, and using that against warranty claims against engine failures and things like that. So it goes right through a vast range of things that it's used for.
Okay, so it's more than just the fuel management part. There's actually an equipment management part and creating a digital paper trail that empowers that organisation to either make warranty claims or make sure their employees are doing the right thing, or make sure they're just securing their assets within sometimes quite a broad range of locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have customers that have 40 or 50 sites over the country and have hundreds and hundreds of vehicles traveling all over the country using all their different fueling sites. So to try and track that manually is a massive task. So you're bringing all that information, putting it at their fingertips. It's all live data coming back, using the latest communications methods. So it's all there live. They can use it from anywhere in the world, doesn't matter if they're traveling. So that certainly helps a lot of businesses plan, or look at what's happening within their business for the fuel side of their business. So
it sounds a lot like the whole Internet of Things and where we're going to head with 5G, but it sounds like, Dean, you're already doing it.
Correct. It pretty much is. So we're using some of the latest technology in communications, which is your Cat M1 band. So that's fairly new. It's sort of outside your 3G, 4G. It's a 4G LTE band, which is dedicated for the Internet of Things. Not the lowest level, but it's sort of a medium level band, which we can still get quite a bit of data over, because we can update all our products remotely, all the firmware and things in them, and add new features to them remotely. When we release new things, we don't actually have to go to site to update them. So using that technology and the new technology is certainly something we're pretty proud of what we're doing, and we love investing in new technology and using it. We've got a lot of products under development, a lot of new products under development using some of the latest technologies as well. So exciting times ahead.
So that new band that you're just talking about there, that LTE 4G band, gives you increased throughput or maybe lower latency for data, that then removes or at least broadens one of the constraints with anything remote, which is trying to talk to it and getting it to talk back in a meaningful way. Yeah,
well, the Cat M1 band is data only, so there's no voice on it, so you can't use a phone on it. It's dedicated for the Internet of Things. It's a lower speed band, but not having the voice and everything on it certainly helps. But it also runs at a slightly lower frequency, so we get better coverage too. So we're getting coverage where normally a phone won't work, for instance. So that sort of helps as well, especially with New Zealand's quite small, it's quite easy, but sort of heading into the Australian market, there's some pretty remote places there. They have some very good Cat M1 coverage over there, which is is far better than any of the normal mobile bands. So can you follow that technology as it gets rolled out in countries, so that your fuel management system, as soon as that bandwidth gets freed up for data in international countries, you can then roll your service in? Or is it, where have you found success in getting into international markets? Yeah, well, the service don't restrict us at all. We've got a plug and play module on our board, so we can change whatever service we like, whether it be 3G or even old 2G, 4G, 5G as it comes in. Satellite, as we're working on some satellite applications as well now. So we don't have to change our hardware, we just have a plug-in module that changes those things. That side of the technology, we've built it so that we can move with it, even upgrade older systems as technologies drop off and better ones come along. We don't have to replace the whole product, we just replace a small module in it. And that allows us to move into just about any country in the world and use the services they've got available. which is really great.
That's superb. To be adaptable with the technology side of it that goes alongside the core part of what your product does. Now, you're the software for this and the coding of all of this and the management of it. This is all done out of Tauranga in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of electronics engineers on board here. We're looking for a couple of new ones actually. struggling to find the staff at the moment. And we've got our software engineers based out of Palmerston North. But yeah, everything's done here in New Zealand. All our coding, all our software, all our design, product design, and most of the manufacturing's done in New Zealand as well. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Those roles you're looking for, I think it's 2 electronics engineers, graduate or a couple of years experience.
We're probably looking for a couple of graduates, definitely. We like to bring on these young guys that are excited about the technology and new technology, and and we can train them up and bring them through with our senior engineers. We've got space, we need more factory staff at the moment. We need a new factory manager. We need an inwards, outwards good dispatch person, and on the list goes on. So we're sort of trying to fill those spots over the next sort of between now and March next year. So yeah, we've had a lot of growth. We've just leased another building, doubling our footprint, our size. Got about another 6 or 7 products to release next year, which is pretty exciting. So yeah.
Was any of this COVID related, or was this is just the natural curve of where your business growth was up to?
Yeah, we've had some massive growth. We're running at about 35% growth last year before COVID, and hasn't slowed down at all. Obviously, we had a bit of a breather through COVID, so I actually was quite grateful for it. To be honest, it actually gave us a bit of time to catch up and have a bit of a rethink on how we're doing things and how we're going to manage things going forward. So since COVID and we got back into it, again, we're just struggling to keep up with it. To be honest, it's just been so busy. So,
who's the type of we talked about the electronics graduate? Where do you find the talent? Like, if I was to introduce you to people, where do you find those new hires? Is it all local in Tauranga, or does someone have to move to get there? Is it out of university, or are you looking for tinkerers that are good with a soldering iron and understand PCB boards?
Yeah, it's a bit of a range. We've got some staff that were originally local. One of our electronics engineers went to school here in Tauranga, went to university. I'd sort of known him. He'd come and work for us in the holidays as well. Great guy, and as soon as he finished uni, I found out and rang him up and said, "You want a job? Come and work for us." So, and another one is from Sri Lanka. So he's been in New Zealand a number of years now with his family. We've pulled staff in from Christchurch, from Auckland, from all over the place. So we do find it hard to get the technical staff in Tauranga, especially for the electronic side of things. But we're keen to bring some young guys on and get them into a job and get them into something exciting. So,
what's the graduate degree that they are best suited to have if they're to come and then start working or apply for those roles?
Mainly more around the electronics engineering sort of degrees. One of our guys has sort of done a mechatronics degree as well. So most of our stuff is more hardcore electronic design, not so much. We do have a mechanical engineer. Obviously, we do develop all the enclosures and the systems that hold all our products. There's not that much sort of mechanical moving parts in them. It's more sort of hardcore electronics, although saying that, we are developing things like flow meters and those sorts of things now as well. So yeah, it's evolving, evolving on a monthly basis. But as we move forward, we've always got our eyes open for new staff for sure, and we've got ads out there now, and we're pretty pedantic on who we hire. We need to get the right. We're a small business. We need to get the right people in place to help us, grow. If we get that right, then things will fly. If we don't get it right, then that can be a massive hindrance to us as well. So yeah, because they can't sort of be absorbed into a big organisation. They've got to really be accountable for what they're doing. So.
Yeah, I completely understand. Every small business needs to make sure that every person on the team counts, both for culture and attitude and competency. And if you've got a willingness to learn, you can go a long way. If you're in your early 20s as a recent graduate, there's a lot you can achieve helping out an organisation in New Zealand.
No, absolutely.
What Dean, what got you into the electronics side of things originally?
I'm always had an interest in electrical and electronics field. I remember when I was probably about 3 years old, following the electrician around our house, picking up all the bits of wire he cut off and putting them into a bag. That's my earliest memory of being interested in the electrical field. And I used to love going and looking in the back of his van and seeing what he had and those sorts of things. And it's just sort of evolved, and over the years, as I grew up with the Dick Smith electronics, and I sort of worked my way through all the Dick Smith electronics kits, and as young kids do, and then started fossicking at the local rubbish tip and bringing home car stereos and all sorts of stereos and things, and fixing them and selling them to my older brothers' mates, and for their cars and things, and building stereos, all those sorts of things as I grew up, and alarm systems, and then. I got an electrical apprenticeship, so I did an electrical apprenticeship in Katikati, and then sort of moved to Tauranga and was working for an electrical contractor in Tauranga for about 8 years. Done my electrical inspector's ticket, so I'm an electrical inspector, still a registered electrical inspector by trade. But in the background, always had an interest in electronics and worked and played with electronics. So I've had no official university training in electronics. I'm completely self-taught. So when I finally left the electrical contracting business and didn't really know what I wanted to do, so my wife and I set up a electronics component distribution business. She was at the time working as at one of the schools as a teacher aide, and there was a lack of the ability to find components and things for their electronics classes. We're talking 20 years ago. Electronics was pretty new in schools then, and they were struggling to get parts. So we started importing and selling electronic parts to schools and universities all over the country. So we ran that for about 6 years, and while that was happening, I sort of taught myself microprocessor programming and more commercial type PCB design rather than building them all myself, and sort of went from there and just developed further over the years. Developed all sorts of products for all sorts of industries. Got to the point where I didn't really want to learn all the new technology. I loved knowing what it was, but you end up running the business. So we have since employed obviously a couple of electronics engineers who do all the development. I still have a bit of a finger in it when they're too busy, but I try not to. Can't help myself. But so yeah, I'm sort of that's sort of where I am. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I only found that out probably, I can't remember, it was 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been like that all my life. I just thought I was a little bit stupid at school, couldn't do simple maths and times tables properly, really struggled with it, but always pushed myself really hard to make sure I passed everything. Had 3 older brothers who'd all passed school C, all 5 subjects, and that I wasn't going to be the dumb one of the family. So took on 6 subjects for school C, passed all that. But a lot of it was because I remembered it, not because I actually learnt it. I'm very visual. I like to, visualize things, and I can see, if I can visualize something or see it written down, I'll remember it better than someone just telling me. So that's how I got through it. And it wasn't till 5 or 6 years ago when there was an article in the Listener, and it was 20 things that you do if you're dyslexic. And my wife was reading it, and she ticked off 19 of them.
Wow.
And that's where we sort of come to the conclusion that, actually that's me. I'm dyslexic. No wonder I'm a little bit different. So yeah, it's quite interesting though. It just shows you that you can get through things and find ways of managing that. Back when I was at school, there wasn't really any knowledge of that type of person and a lot of those things, so you just get lumped in with everybody else, and you just you sink or swim. So it's a bit different these days, but there's a lot of dyslexic kids out there, and at least they've got things in place now to manage that a bit better.
And I think, Dean, just with thank you for sharing that your backstory and how you've got to the position you're in now. And I think the dyslexia part of it, we all have weaknesses, whether it's medically diagnosed or not. Sometimes our weaknesses can actually end up meaning we do things to work around it, or to ignore it and focus on something completely different. And the key is to actually just focus on each of our strengths, identify our strengths, and once we know what they are, go down that path. And what I love with your story is that you wanted to pass school, and you wanted to get through it, and so by memorizing it, that you got you through it. But really your passion was always tinkering with the electronics, the stereos, doing a bit of buying and selling, some trading on the side with it, and going deep into the PCB manufacturing and software coding side of it. And I think for anyone who is struggling with a system, like a school system, that's not the only way of getting through. That's not the only way of being successful. There's plenty of paths to get there.
Oh, absolutely. It sure is, yeah. And some people were just, a lot better. I'm shocking at writing things down. I commit most things to memory, whether it be in a meeting or whatever I'm doing. I have a very good memory of things that I want to remember. not so much things that I don't need to remember, but certainly if it's something that I'm extremely interested in, I'll remember every aspect of it. So it's interesting, and dyslexia is we do look at things differently. I drive all our development, and I talk with all our clients and go out and see what their problems are and how we can solve them, and come up with the new product ideas, and bring that back to my engineers and sit down and have a meeting. And I already in my head know exactly what the product's going to look and feel like when it's finished, but I've sort of got to convey that back to them when they're starting at the other end, trying to come from nothing through to where I want to be, and trying to sort of convey my image of that product and what I want. It can be quite a challenge sometimes, because they don't see the end solution where I'm seeing the end solution. And I think probably my worst thing is actually underestimating the time it's going to get to that solution, because I can already see it. So to me, it's a quick hop, step, and a jump to get there, but to everyone else, it's a big task. So that's sort of been one of my downfalls in sort of estimating time to do things.
I think you're not alone in that. I think when we're all working in these intangibles, it's much harder to you have to be deliberate about how you communicate what the end state is of that intangible piece of software, because it's not like building a commercial building. You can see when the foundations go in, you can see where the walls go up. There's a very material shift that brings everyone on the journey, because you can see how much of the building has been built. But when it's an intangible, it's harder to see when you're halfway through or near the end. Yeah, and I think probably I've got an extremely high work ethic, and I'll just work as many hours as I need to get something done, and that taking that mentality away and putting it into other staff which are only working 8 hours a day, you've sort of got to compensate for that. Whereas if I'm doing something for myself, I'll go, right, I need to do it today. If I've got to work 16 hours today, I'll work 16 hours today to get it done. Or I'll work all weekend or whatever it'll be. But obviously staff can't do that. So that's sort of, I think that's where I get it's going to take this long to do it, because I'm thinking about how long I'll take to do it rather than how long it's actually going to take to do it. And as our business grows, those things change significantly as well. As you grow bigger, you've got to have the systems in place to manage that. We've just been through ISO certification, so we've just been ISO certified for 3 ISO standards, and we're just doing a 4th one now for data security. So we've done that mainly to
get the systems in place now before we grow too big to help us manage that. All those things that we typically want done quickly have slowed down a lot now because of those systems are in place. And unfortunately, that's just what you have to do. You can't, as you grow, you can't be as nimble and as quick. So, but you can still do things quicker than a lot of bigger corporate companies that we're up against in the world as well. So. Yeah.
And you get to mitigate a certain amount of risk as well. Of when you move quickly, there's not necessarily the same documentation or risk management that you need when you're at scale, or particularly working in a sector like you're working in.
Absolutely.
Another one of those accreditations you've got recently is, of course, the New Zealand Code license. You were one of the first to come on board when we launched that. Relatively recently. What attracted you to being able to put New Zealand Code on the software that you developed, Code?
We're just really big about manufacturing and doing things in New Zealand. We're really proud of it, and and being able to put that on the Code as well. It's giving our software guys a bit of a prestige sort of thing. We've already put that on our we have a cloud basically portal, a cloud app that we run all our customers on, so that's already up there, the logo's on there, you can click on it and it takes you to the website and everything. So that was put up pretty much the next day after we subscribed, so, and that's really good. That sort of makes them proud too. And I think we're just seeing a lot of interest in New Zealand technology and things done in New Zealand. It's we're getting inquiries from all over the world at the moment, and we're just having to say to them, look, we're just not ready to go that far yet, or go there, or go to this country, and we're taking step by step. But I'm just seeing more and more inquiries come from offshore, and I think the whole COVID thing's been massive for us in that aspect. Which we're pretty much a free country now, doing whatever we want to do. Where most countries are locked down still, in some form, and still fighting with the COVID. And there's issues with getting equipment and parts and products. So it's been great. So promoting that whole New Zealand. We're from New Zealand. We've made it in New Zealand. New Zealand's got great technology. It's there's no reason we can't be the best in the world with what we do.
100%. I'd love to see how you've applied that New Zealand Code on your customer portal, and maybe that's something Hugo can edit into some of the short episode video shorts that we do for this this feature. Because it is something to help international countries and businesses to see where something has been coded, because a lot of the value actually is in the intangibles now, not necessarily in the physical good part, although that's a critical component. And I think, to pick up on your point, post the COVID world, we can be known for anything because we've managed to at least solve COVID through science and technology. And some of the countries we expected should have been able to do the same, like the US, haven't. Partly that's policy, but another part is we've focused on a science and technology-led solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
When the borders do open up, will that be a moment where you will look to expand further into Australia, for example, or can you do that all remote, given that you can ship your product, get it installed, and then configure it and monitor it remotely?
Yeah, well, we've prior to COVID, we were working with potentially a national distributor in Australia. So it was early days. We've got some gear on, some systems on trial over there with some of the key clients around Australia. So it's sort of slowed things down a bit, but and we've had some key projects go in over there in the last few weeks actually, which I 100% intended to go over and help them do and help them commission them and get them all in, but we've had to actually do it 100% remotely, which has been a little bit of a challenge, but we've got there in the end, and all the systems have gone to site now to be installed. So that's for a company, Snowy Hydro in Australia. We're working through our distributor over there to work with them. There's systems gone on with some of the biggest East Coast fuel distributors on trial, and yeah, there's a lot of little things ticking away over there. And as soon as the borders do open up, we're sort of planning to do a proper release over there, sort of next year sometime when we can get over there. So, and then once we've done, once we've set that up in Australia, we'll be looking at other countries as well for sure. So we're just working with UL Labs out of Singapore at the moment to get compliance for about another 16 different countries for the electronic side of things. So, so it's onwards and upwards.
Well done for how far you've come already, and also to have those plans in play. It's fascinating hearing from companies in this software sector that aren't the big billion-dollar companies. They're not the big, the Xeros and the Vens, but actually collectively it is a billion-dollar industry of all of these players that, like yourself, that are solving specific business problems in specific niches that provide intelligence, reporting, management, waste efficiency, all of these things that help the real world actually continue to function as we have bigger populations, as there's more intensification on resources. We certainly need more technology like what you create to manage that in the most productive way possible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we sort of look to the future too, and everyone says to us, well, how long is diesel going to last? Because diesel was our main, our main sort of market, the commercial diesel sector. And well, it's probably not going to run out in my lifetime, but you got to look at other alternative energies and other things we can do with our system. So, we're currently in the process of building a whole new software suite, which enables us a lot more flexibility, so we can actually move some of our products into different industry sectors and do different things with them, which we already have started to do. So, it's just because we're monitoring fuel doesn't mean we can monitor anything. We can monitor any fluid, any parameter, and bring it back in through the system and give reporting on it. So the diesel commercial fuel market is tiny in New Zealand. We manage about probably just over 100 million litres of diesel a year now through our system. So but we're looking at mining in Australia. One mine we've done a proposal for, they use 80 million litres a year just in that one mine. So it sort of gives you, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of customers in New Zealand, and we're working with probably some of the biggest fuel users in New Zealand. So it just shows you sort of the market scales. It's New Zealand's been a great place to build a product and test it and get it ready for the world, but the world's just the diesel market in the world is massive, not to mention all these other potential industry sectors that we can push our product into. So
I can imagine like the traditional fuels, petrol, diesel, aren't going away anytime soon, but even if they did, I think water, people say water is the new oil, or data is the new oil. It still requires all of this management, right, and intelligence on systems. I think a lot of the local councils could do with this type of system, with fluid management of water. I just saw a report yesterday on in Wellington City Council. They've done some measurement, and there's a pipe that's dropping 20,000 litres a day. So when something like that becomes more valuable to fix, there are going to be the requirement for solutions like this. Or you can continue to focus on just the diesel market and go for one customer that's the size of our entire nation's needs. I mean, that's another way to grow, right? And that, to me, from a sales and biz dev, that's probably the easier way to go.
It is for sure. But I think we want to keep selling product in New Zealand. We'll get to a point where, we've pretty much taken the market over in New Zealand and pushed other products out. We're probably the largest selling fuel management system in New Zealand now. So we'll get to a point where that will slow down, because there is a lot of retrofitting going on, a lot of old systems being pulled out, new systems being put in, upgrades being done to keep up with standards and things. So as that another couple of years, I think we will start catching up, and business may slow a little bit in the New Zealand market. But that's sort of where we're looking now at what other potential areas are there to apply our products to, where we don't have to do any redevelopment. It's just a few changes in the software. Instead of measuring how many litres of water in a tank, it might be how many tons of grain in a silo. those sorts of things. So same technology as far as hardware goes and everything. It's just different parameters we're measuring. So so there's, but internationally, it's we would never be able to supply the entire world market with product, even a tiny percentage of it. Even if you got 0.2% of the world market or something, it would probably still be, it's probably still beyond what we'd be capable of doing.
All right, and that's the brilliance of being able to develop it here and then export it to your pick of countries or your pick of markets, because we don't need to have a mass monopoly to win in New Zealand. We only need a handful, and that scale brings all of that. One of the people I interviewed on this said, it's about bringing buckets of cash back to New Zealand, and if all of us as software can bring back a certain amount through intellectual property, then that increases the standard of living in New Zealand for all of us.
Oh, absolutely, and not just about the sale of we're selling hardware, but our software is a monthly license, so it's ongoing revenue, and that just keeps going as long as the systems are running. So
that's the beauty of SaaS and cloud, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's great, but it also enables us to put the people behind it to do further development and to grow it and to give people more for what they're paying for. Everyone contributes a little bit, then everyone gets a lot. So, so that's sort of our how we sort of different markets aren't used to some of that type of application, and especially in the fuel industry. Monthly fees for software is becoming quite a norm now, but there's some parts of the industry, different industries, that they're just not used to that. So sort of educating them and getting them on board and why it's a good thing has also been a bit of a challenge, but we're getting through it. And people, once they start using it and seeing what we do and how much more they get for the little amount they're paying each month than the current systems they're using, then that sort of wins them over and gets them on board. And typically we will get a customer who might put 1 or 2 systems in, and then they love it so much, all of a sudden, they put 30 or 40 systems in. So that's sort of how it grows. And
that's
we've done
the beauty.
really no marketing or anything apart from our website, and we've got distributors around the country now, and we assign the distributors. But from a marketing perspective, it's just me really getting in front of people, showing them what the gear does, one-on-ones, and going from there. But it's New Zealand now, it's pretty much selling itself. I don't have to do too much of that anymore in New Zealand, so hence the reason as soon as the borders are open, I'll be off to Aussie. So.
And Dean, what's the best way if someone's listening to this from an overseas market? They've put into Google search and this episode's come up and they've thought, well, maybe this is the solution. If it's in a week or a year from now, what's the best way of then engaging with Everlink to do that demonstration of your fuel management systems?
Certainly, you can get in touch with us directly, just via our website, which is just everlink.co.nz. We can then guide them either to some local distributors, or if we haven't got a distributor in the area, we can work with them directly. So I typically support all our distributors and have sales demos and things with them as well, because it's not about just going and selling our product. It's about going, talking to the client, seeing what their issues are and how we can solve those issues for them, rather than saying, here's a fuel management system and this is how it works. We've made our system so flexible, we can pretty much make it do whatever we want to do for individual clients without having to do too much work. It's all software configurable.
User experience, isn't it? It's key, and it's the almost the forgotten piece sometimes of building stuff, is that how we all interface with a system depends on our own upbringing, our background, our experience, and if it's that's kind of a hard part. And I guess that's what you do with talking with your customers, is seeing how people use it.
Oh, absolutely, and it's a key thing, really. You got to make it simple for them to take on as well. I find that we can go and I can tell them everything it does, and they could go, oh wow, that's amazing, but we're only going to use about 10% of that, or there's no point telling them about stuff they're not going to use. So that's why whenever I'm talking to a customer, I say, well, what are your issues? How do you want to use the system? How do you currently use it? What are you missing? What do you need? And based on that, I can usually gauge it, how much I can tell them about something, or what functionality we can tell them about, or what other products we can add to it, on how they get fuel. And every company's different. We've got people that use a 4-digit PIN to get fuel, and they use the same PIN for the whole company, which is a bit of a waste of time, but that's there for security. And then we've got people who track, who's filling what vehicle or piece of equipment, entering in things like your kilometers or your hours or cost centers or job numbers, all that sort of information as well. So it's can be set up for anybody, and sort of growing. Moved into bigger corporate organisations, like Kiwi Rail. So we manage like Kiwi Rail's, all of Kiwi Rail's fuels and oils and additives right through the whole country now. Lots of other customers, most of the bus companies, and right down to small farm tanks. So huge range of people using it, and they've all got different requirements. So it has been a bit of a challenge to get where we are and make it suitable, and moving into the Australian market, there's a whole new set of challenges there that we're overcoming as well. So even though they do the same thing, they do it completely differently.
Of course, and I expect nothing less. Dean, I've really appreciated you sharing some insight into your business, Everlink, and some of the solutions that you provide to better management of liquids, specifically fuel. I think what you've managed to achieve from Tauranga with the software element, with the manufacturing of the electronics, sharing your personal history has been inspiring, I am sure, to many of the listeners. And I wish you all the best getting into Australia with those 6 or 7 new products that you're introducing, and of course the hiring of 2 electronic engineers. If you're listening to this thinking, I want to join a company that's going places, that's growing, and is doing some pretty cool stuff, doing IoT before it was a thing, you may want to consider Everlink.
Cool, excellent. It's been great talking to you too, Ryan.